Hey everybody, welcome back to Lettermen Row. This is Rapid Reaction brought to you by Buyers Auto. I'm Austin Ward. That's Jeremy Birmingham. And another departure, one of the big ones here for Ohio State, as Shaun Wade has made his announcement, one that he has made previously. He'd also gone the other way at this time last January. But now we know the course that Shaun Wade is finally going to take. He's declared for the NFL draft, will not use that extra year of eligibility. He had talked about maybe his desire to come back and compete for that national championship berm, but he's going to leave without one.
He's gone. He's back. He's gone. He's back. He's gone. Listen, the kid's put his time into the program. He's obviously had an up and down last year. I think people are able to look at that objectively and see that this past season, for a number of reasons, didn't go the way that Shaun wanted to. But I personally think that if NFL teams are looking at him, they're not looking at him as an outside cornerback anyway. I think clearly the goal for this season was to prove he could play there to increase that draft stock. But he's an inside corner in the NFL, maybe a safety, and I think he'll be a good one. I honestly think that Shaun's talent is best served in that role anyway. I know why he played the outside this year, and I think Buckeyes fans should be grateful that he came back. He was named an All-American, playing in a position that's probably not his best, and it may have hurt him in the short term in the NFL, but long term, Shaun's still got a bright future, and that's it. I mean, one of Kerry Combs' first big 5-star recruits on the trail back in 2017 with Jeff Okudah, and now the Buckeyes will look to replace him.
His situation is certainly a fascinating one because the goal was to prove that he could be an outside corner and then shoot up to the top of the first round to the Jeff Okudah, Damon Arnett level. That clearly did not happen, and there are also complicating factors for that for him without getting a spring camp, without everybody in that Ohio State secondary getting to go through and learn whatever Kerry Combs wanted to do this season. If he wanted to change the scheme, which Ohio State really wasn't able to do on short notice and without full training camps and all that stuff, it's easy to understand why that is. And there are also times where physically, you think of some of those throws that he gave up against Penn State. The plays in the end zone where he's like, he was trying too hard to make interceptions, and that was a mental thing as well. He is a really good slot cornerback. So the point is, if there were people a year ago who had him in mock drafts, even though he had never played outside and was always going to play most likely in nickel or slot corner, that had him as still a first-round value. Now that's too high. He's definitely not going to be a first-round pick or maybe even a second-round pick after what he did this year, but he still has a chance to really make an impact at the next level. And this year, didn't go the way he wanted. That's just a fact.
Yeah, but didn't go the way anyone wanted. I mean, that was 2020. I mean, for Shaun, it was pretty clear as you watched him this year that the footwork on the outside was a little bit different, and he wasn't able to really use his arms to get where he needed to be and to ride receivers the way he wanted to ride them. I mean, he got put in a lot of tough positions. He got out physicaled by bigger receivers like Carnell Powell at Clemson and Ty Frogel at Indiana. He got out quicked by guys like Devontae Smith and Jahan Dotson. He's going to have to go into the NFL and answer some more questions. But again, when you spent 4 years in a program, you've won a lot of games. You've been an All-American. You've won 4 Big Ten championships. How much more can you expect out of these kids to stick around at Ohio State? And it's time to move on. And I think that he will be better for it. I think he'll be a better player down the road because of how this year went.
So you have to look at instantly how this applies to Ohio State now and what it means moving forward. The secondary had issues. There's no other way to say it. We can point to the reasons that they may have struggled, and certainly the lack of veteran experience and injury to Cameron Brown. Those were major factors, and really Ohio State wasn't able to overcome them when you're talking about a team that gave up over 400 yards passing in 3 of the last 5 games. That's undeniable. They finished number 122 in the country against the pass. That's cold, hard facts. They're ugly. And Ohio State's going to have to really answer some questions about what, Kerry Combs wants that defense to be, what he envisions, what Ryan Day envisions that role for that coaching staff looking like moving forward, and who's going to step in and replace Shaun Wade, because they did not give a ton of experience or reps to the young guys, Ryan Watts or Legend Cavazos. Cam Brown, as I said, is coming off of the a major knee injury now, or a major injury to his leg in, Seven Banks, he could potentially still decide to leave. I don't think that he should, but there's a lot of uncertainty for Ohio State at cornerback right now that Shaun Wade is out of the equation.
Yeah, I mean, I don't anticipate there being wholesale changes with the defensive coaching staff. Kerry Combs is going to have a voice and be a leader in the defensive side of the ball. He's going to be either the defensive coordinator or the co-defensive coordinator. He's still going to be involved in setting up and the scheming. But I think what it comes down to is what Ryan Day has said and what a lot of coaches have said over the years. A good coach adjusts his plan to his players. And I think that maybe it was because of the lack of offseason, maybe it was the lack of experience, whatever it was. Kerry Combs seemed to be reluctant to change his approach based on who he had on the field this year or the opponent. I mean, the Buckeyes were pretty much in their defense, and teams have figured out how to exploit that. What made Jeff Hafley's defense a year ago so good was that it was versatile and multiple. The Buckeyes would move in and out of zone and drop to man, and they would do a lot of things with one high, switching over to the two high. Right now, the Buckeyes have an identity crisis in the defensive backfield. And the biggest problem with that is nobody knows who the hell the guys are. So how do you identify what you have if you don't know who the guys are? If Seven Banks were to leave, obviously that's a whole nother can of worms that gets opened up. But Cameron Brown tore his Achilles in October. He's going to be back and fine by the end of spring ball probably. And you expect him to fit right in. You do have early enrollees coming in with Jansen Dunn and Denzel Burke from Kentucky and Arizona, respectively. Those guys will arrive next week. They'll start working their way into the rotation. Jansen Dunn is very similar to Ryan Watts in that 6'2", 6'3" frame, almost 200 pounds, very explosive. And it really is going to be about, and something I wrote about back in November, this is about Kerry Combs needing to trust the talent that's being recruited at Ohio State and letting them develop. And you hope that having a full spring football, full summer conditioning, full fall camp, you're going to see a lot better unit out there next year, no matter what happens with the coaching staff.
Thanks for jogging my memory. I knew that the knee wasn't right for Cameron Brown, but it feels like October, and that injury against Penn State was like 7 years ago. So the Achilles wasn't on the tip of my tongue. I mean, this was a guy, you're talking about Seven Banks and Cameron Brown, where it was going to allow them to rotate three corners. Maybe we would have seen Shaun Wade not have to be on an island on every single snap throughout the entire season. That was a much bigger deal, I think, than maybe initially got credit for instantly. I mean, Cameron Brown he's been in those games before. He doesn't have a ton of reps, but he was on the field a lot in 2019.
He had played more than anybody not named Shaun Wade.
Right.
I mean, in the secondary.
There were some people that were talking about him in those workouts heading into spring or when they got back from quarantine, that Cameron Brown might be one of the fastest players on the team. And, he doesn't always jump off the page as the first guy that you mentioned, because he maybe wasn't quite at that 5-star level. Some of it, trying to learn that position and playing some wide receiver coming out of high school. I mean, once he was out of the equation, Ohio State really wasn't the same. Get those two guys and then develop the freshman. This could still be, it's not as if Ohio State hasn't been recruiting very talented players. That hasn't dipped off.
Right. And it's not just Jansen Dunn and Denzel Burke coming in as freshmen. I mean, they do have 4 other defensive backs that will arrive in the summer, including the 2 top targets at cornerback, which is obviously what this video is primarily focusing on. But when you have Jordan Hancock and J.K. Johnson coming in, who are 2 top 30 players in the country, those guys are going to vie for playing time right away. They're too good not to. And, we can talk about the 2020 pass defense. And we've mentioned it, and it sort of just gets glossed over. But when you lose a guy like Jordan Fuller and you don't have a locked-in, ready-to-go replacement for Jordan Fuller in the back half, that defense gets a lot more conservative. And the Buckeyes allowed a lot of that 10-yard cushion, a lot of that soft coverage, because they didn't trust the fact that they could let the corners play press man, which is what Kerry Combs wants to do. So, the next year will be very important to see how that process how it changes for a guy like Josh Proctor. Marcus Hooker was hurt and not playing particularly well when he wasn't. Ronnie Hickman had some injury issues. Bryson Shaw missed games. Again, it was sort of a perfect storm of crap in the secondary in 2020. And you feel bad for I personally feel bad for Shaun Wade and the fact that his reputation has been so kind of besmirched because he was put in a situation that maybe wasn't ideal from the start, and he didn't make it better because he was obviously inconsistent, and there were some questions about effort in games. But to bring it full circle, I really do think that he'll be a good NFL player, but it won't be on the outside where he played this year.
And also, just imagine how more desperate that situation would have been for the Ohio State secondary in 2020 if they didn't have Shaun Wade and his experience out there. He made a couple huge interceptions. That pick six without Indiana, we might be talking about a completely different season for them. The way that game tightened up late, that wound up being, I think, the actual margin of victory or the go-ahead touchdown, however you want to phrase it, 42-35 in that game. So, he won some individual awards. He got back to a national championship. They came up short. But if you take Shaun Wade out of that last year, much bigger problems. But now Ohio State has to replace him anyway. He had a year of eligibility left. He will not use it. Shaun Wade is heading to the NFL draft. Berm and I breaking it down for you, as always, on Rapid Reaction, brought to you by Buyers Auto. Stay with us for full coverage of the Ohio State Buckeyes at lettermenrow.com.